Brett Yormark spoke to the media for the first time in a long time, and that guy said that this conference is still on the hunt in expansion. ACC teams, watch out. I love this guy. This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. To stay alive in college football, you got to add teams to your conference or you yourself will die. And the Big 12 says that they will do that. And Brett Yormark had some pretty clear thoughts on how and when they're going to do that during his speech at Big 12 Media Days. I think it just showcases the power of this conference. We'll start there with TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. Then Texas Tech to the SEC. That's all their fan base wanted to talk about, at least the rogue ones on Twitter last week. It's not going to happen, and I think it's actually really funny. Texas Tech's a power in the Big 12, but the couple fans got a little too big for their britches there for a second, and hopefully they still embrace the Big 12. We'll finish with BYU robbing Utah. Oh, that's right. Apparently, a third party from BYU offered a Utah player $1.5 million to transfer, and either the story is not true or it just doesn't matter. This is another nothing burger. Thank you, Salt Lake Tribune. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Let's dive right into the Big 12's expansion plans.
What are we getting into today? The Big 12 is ready to expand. I know that we're in the middle of the season, so don't hate on us for the realignment talk, but here we are again.
Sure. So this is the biggest storyline I think has come out of Big 12 basketball media days this week. Brett Yormark meeting with the folks in Kansas City, and this is the topic that I have the main takeaway from is he was pretty transparent that the Big 12 is going to expand when the time is right. The time is not today, but when asked about expansion, he said, "I'm in favor of it." This is something Brett Yormark is still thinking about. It's still every morning he's the stock market checks his phone. It's like, I wonder if North Carolina or Miami or Louisville slid up this time and I can respond to them. He is in favor of expansion and the economics and the access make sense. So in essence, what this means is where the SEC has said, hey, we're kind of closing our doors, and the Big Ten says, oh, well, we want Notre Dame. Other than that, we're kind of focused right now. And the ACC says, well, we're just trying an expansion to hold on to Florida State and Clemson and hope that we don't collapse altogether. The Big 12 says, we are ready to pounce. And look, like you mentioned, this is a middle of the day and in the middle of college football season. So it's kind of weird to talk a storyline about expansion, but this is the new era of the Big 12 that we've entered. It's no longer Bob Bowlesby. With Brett Yormark, the new commissioner of the conference, I guess he's been here a couple years now, this is a guy that wants to attack. He is open for business. We are in a league, he also said during his media day spiel, that we're in a league that will fight for equal representation in the college football playoff. If the SEC wants 3, the Big 12 wants 3. If the Big 10 wants 4, the Big 12 wants 4. They're not going to sit back and allow the AP poll or the FPI metric for ESPN dictate how college football is run and who gets in the college football playoff. I think for him to expect multiple bids, not just this year, but moving forward, highlighting the quality of the Olympic sports in the Big 12, like a baseball, a softball, even tennis being great in this conference, or cross country at BYU winning a national championship, and past that, how the Big 12 is in a spot to steal teams from other conferences, and that when it makes sense, he's ready, he's there, and he's in favor of adding new schools. That's an attack and an approach Bob Bowlesby didn't have, an attack and approach that Jim Phillips doesn't have with the ACC, and an attack and an approach that I think sets the Big 12 apart right now.
We've talked about this a ton during the offseason, and we'll talk about it again. We'll rehash kind of the ideas. The big targets in the ACC, despite honestly all 3 of them having pathetic years in Florida State, Clemson, and North Carolina, they still feel like they're the teams that are most likely to wind up in the SEC or Big Ten. One season is not going to change that. I don't think. If and when we get to that bridge, we'll talk about it. But are the targets still the same? Is it still, Miami's kind of your top of the line crown jewel that you could get. Louisville's right after that. Maybe a Georgia Tech, maybe some other teams, NC State, Virginia Tech. Do you think part 1, I guess, is on targets? Part 2, is our timeline still like 2030, or do you think they can be more aggressive than that?
Yeah, so I thought it was funny. We'll talk about this as well. Texas Tech fans are excited to go to the SEC in either 2030 or 2031. So at least they have the knowledge that that's
more,
one thing.
More
things
on that in our next video.
Right. Things are going to shift, which that part's, I think that is still the shift date. And even the casual fan of expansion or realignment understands that's when these TV contracts begin to rework. That's when the networks start to shuffle things around, and teams like Florida State and Clemson have a very low price tag to exit the ACC, and they can bounce to the Big Ten. They can bounce to the SEC. Now, I do not believe that they will be Big 12 bound. I do not think that they are the ones that we point out and say, hey, well, the Big 12 and Brett Yormark must throw the kitchen sink at them. Even with Clemson losing right now, I believe that they are still targets for the Big Ten, targets for the SEC. It's not them I'm focused on for the Big 12 exactly gaining new members, but instead them being the domino to eventually lead the Big 12 poaching different members of the ACC. I do think Louisville is still in the conversation. I think Pitt is up there. I'd be shocked if Georgia Tech, even as good as they are right now, I just don't know. And some people say, hey, the SEC wants that brand. Other people say, you know what? Nobody wants that brand. I think the Big 12 would be very lucky to have the Atlanta metro area. A lot of folks are confused on how they sit in realignment. Duke brings a lot of value to a lot of people, and maybe they are tied to North Carolina. But if they're tied to North Carolina, then is NC State tied to North Carolina? Or is that an opportunity with the Big 12 being in the position they're in to say, hey, if the SEC doesn't want UNC, if they want, say, Virginia, which is a academic power and brings you a new market, and somehow North Carolina slips through the cracks, this is the conference that would take Louisville, that would take North Carolina or NC State if the legislature in that state made sure that all the schools stayed together. Obviously, Brett Yormark would pounce on that. Past that, Miami is going to be a pretty coveted school, but I just don't know if they're in that top four because we still hear that the SEC may not want to compete with Florida. They don't want to mix things up. And the Big Ten doesn't love the last couple of decades from the Hurricanes, despite how good they are this season. Or I guess how good they've been. I guess that could derail here the next couple of weeks as we've just seen them lose.
Hopefully.
But the Florida State guy strikes again. We as the Big 12, if I may, in business with the ACC, I believe. It won't be Memphis. It won't be UConn. I don't think it'll be Gonzaga. It will have to make the most sense. And what will make the most sense is bringing in new rivals for Cincinnati or West Virginia, expanding on the East Coast. And from there, I certainly don't see, if things collapse in the ACC, Stanford, Cal, SMU, even being schools that the Big 12 looks at. And that's partly because there's some pettiness there in the way that those universities treated our conference when the Pac-12 was once a thing. It's dead now.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like the targets are the same. And it also feels like, man, if and when the Big Ten and the SEC expand, and if they pick up a Florida State or a Clemson or a North Carolina or some of these other programs that we've talked about that may be tied to some of those programs, the ACC will deal itself a blow there, kind of unintentional. Like it is their fault, but it's kind of like they're dealt a blow because of teams leaving. And the the Big 12 could come in and just truly finish them off. Not that they would be so much competition for them, because I think there would be kind of the way in our minds, we do still, not trying to get on the Big 12 here. We do have the dividing line of here's the SEC and the Big 10, and then here's the Big 12 and the ACC. And I don't really know if that's an argument right now with how the way this year is going. But if it was 5 years ago or whatever, it wouldn't even be an argument then, because I think there would be a pretty clear dividing line between 3 and 4. But what it would do is it would eliminate 4. It would put 4 down to, listen, this is just a really good group of 5 kind of conference, at the group of 6 kind of conference at this point, with the ACC falling so far behind. And I don't know that the Big 12's mission would be to eliminate the ACC, but in making their own conference stronger, that is in practice what they would be doing.
No doubt. And that's where, look, at the end of all of this, the thesis of all of this, the ACC is the weakest link right now because their strongest schools want to get out. And I don't think ESPN is going to be comfortable doling money to a conference whose best brands, after they lose North Carolina or Virginia, somehow Virginia is a big brand here. I don't get it, but all these realignment blokes say that that's the one they're pointing at because of academics and brand power to be one to watch. Florida State, Clemson. I mean, if these schools exit, then NC State can't carry the boats. They can't. They can't keep the load. And so I do believe we're looking at 1, 2, and 3. The ACC outside looking in because their best brands probably want to go. Whoa. Today's show is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda has that Japanese craftsmanship that is oh so beautiful with every single look. They deliver confidence with every ride. More IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else. Footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. Mazda brings the same intention to how they craft every model. Feel Japanese craftsmanship in every detail and make every day feel like it's anything but smooth, and handling intuitive controls are incredible. All-wheel drive as well. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every moment count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Do it with Mazda. Today's show is also brought to you by Peloton, which is like an all-new thing. You're like, oh, the thing that I run on? No, boss. Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. The most advanced equipment yet, designed to give you real-time guidance and endless ways to move, whether you're running, lifting, or cross-training with your favorite instructors. This is training reimagined. Peloton, built for breakthroughs. Tools that'll help you plan, stay motivated, and reach peak performance. Love how the Peloton IQ system offers real-time strength coaching, tracks your reps, suggests the right weights as well, and corrects your form even. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push forward. Explore the new Peloton Cross-Training Tread Plus today at onepeloton.com. It is onepeloton.com. Visit them today at onepeloton.com.
Is this a possibility?
Texas Tech to the SEC is on the table. If you're a Texas Tech fan as of 7 days ago, this is one of the funniest. See, I love Texas Tech. I think they are the most valuable, if not second most valuable program in the Big 12 right now, alongside BYU from a brand standpoint. And they are carrying this conference in a lot of ways and bringing the Big 12 into the new era. At the same time, so rich. This is from Matador Kingdom. Here's kind of what happened. This is a bit of the context here. The Big 12 said no more tortillas. And Texas Tech fans said, I want to throw tortillas. And the Big 12 said, hey, that knife you threw on the sideline, don't do that. Come to find out, they didn't throw the knife on the sideline. So that was like the Big 12 walked it back, fined Kansas, hey, we have your back. But the Texas Tech fans felt kind of slighted. They're like, okay, the Big 12 doesn't stand up for us, then we're done. It's over. After 6 wins this season, 6 wins, Matador Kingdom tweets this: it's time to face the ugly truth. The Big 12 does not have our best interests. I understand we all hate the SEC and their bias. However, I'd rather be in a toxic conference that provides more money, more stability, and a larger brand than a toxic conference that has less money, little stability, and a small brand. It's time to embrace it. SEC 2031. TJ, from there, a lot of these Texas Tech Twitter accounts and some of these rogue fans picked up this entire movement last Thursday or so, where they decided Tech was going to ditch the Big 12 as the number 7 college football team in the country, do their own thing in the SEC, make way more money, and go completely rogue. And then they immediately lost. That's just the first thing they did in this entire campaign to get out of the Big 12 because they're too big, was to exit. And now I'm glad that many of these Tech fans have walked back the idea that they were going to dominate the Big 12 conference to the point where they had to leave the SEC because we were too small. But at the same time, this is what this is indicative of to me is that Texas Tech and their fan base, they recognize how good they are. The Big 12 is missing something, and it is that top dog that is just cocky and has moxie. When Oklahoma won, they would tell you about it. When you saw Texas win the Big 12 or lose in the Big 12, they would tell you about it. We need more. We genuinely need more opportunities for the Big 12 teams at the top to be badass, to tell you how badass they are, because that's how you grow a brand. So even last week when Gambling Gauchos is tweeting, when Texas Tech goes to the SEC, we should schedule all the Big 10 teams. It's incredible. Some of the jokes that came out of this, but incredible that Texas Tech really feels like they're in the driver's seat so early in their success that they can jump ship to the best conference in college football.
Okay, let's go big picture here. We all understand what it takes to win in this sport.
Yeah.
Money is
right?
important.
There you go, yeah.
I had a conversation with somebody earlier this week about how I think historical success means less now than it ever has.
Absolutely.
And that conversation was related to Lane leaving Ole Miss for Florida. And big picture, to zoom way out, I promise I'm going somewhere with this. So he's like, man, what lane is this guy driving in right now? No pun intended.
Nice.
I think Florida still has a lot of advantages over Ole Miss, just from an overall standpoint. Resources, recruiting ground, no state income tax, better facilities. Like, Florida is a better job than Ole Miss. However, I don't think that historical importance factors into coaching quite as much as it maybe did in the past. The idea of like, well, Florida's won national titles here and Ole Miss has never won national. So this is a place you can come in and win. I don't know that matters like it once did. Now that you've got NIL and the portal, and shoot, everybody in the SEC is rich right now. I mean, even Vandy's got money. Like, all these places have money. And so where I land with that, and coming back to Texas Tech has never been considered a place that would maybe go to the SEC. Could they, with 4 or 5 years of success where they continue to compete for conference championships and they spend the way that they're spending, could they be a target down the road? Like, I know that we're putting the kibosh on this right now, but like, is that crazy to think that if they don't pull something off and continue to gain eyeballs and gain success, that they could be a target down the road?
This is the Clemson theory, and it's something that 100% I brought up on my show and on your show a couple of times. Anyone can be Clemson. 2009, I think it was 2009. I'd have to go back. I haven't used this stat in a while. I actually had a conversation with Dabo Sweeney about 6 months ago, and we were kind of going over the numbers. And I was like, dude, did you know that in 2009, like, as you were just taking over, Clemson had an athletic budget, a surplus, what's the word for when you make money? Your revenue here? I
don't know. I never did.
Yeah. They had a smaller revenue in 2009 in football than Bowling Green. And he didn't know that. He's like, oh, wow, it was that bad. It was that bad. And in the span of 10 years, they became the talk of college football. In 10 years, they became the team that everybody wanted to be. Your envy Clemson. Yeah. And how do you go from having a smaller revenue than Bowling Green to dominating college football, winning multiple national championships? It's a hard question to ask, but a big piece of that for him was culture. And now ultimately the money conversation's in play. Clemson has stumbled. With that, if you can combine money and culture at this point, like Texas Tech seems to be doing, like BYU seems to be doing, after 5 years of winning college football playoff games, win a national championship, get 2 under your belt in the span of 6 or 7 years, that's when the SEC and the Big Ten say, okay, this is an investing program, an investing school. We want them in our league. It's a bad thing for the Big 12, and you would hope that we get 2, 3, 4 teams that are competing for college football playoff wins year in and year out. But at the same time, I mean, if you're the SEC and the Big Ten and you see, let's say, a Texas Tech hypothetically goes 5 years, 4 college football playoffs, 2 national championships, I want that. ESPN wants them to have that. Fox wants that in the Big Ten. That's where this could benefit Texas Tech. They could be the next Clemson. None of us cared about Clemson 15 years ago. None of us. And most of America today, sadly, doesn't care about BYU or Texas Tech for some reason. The only way you can make the country care about you is being in the top 10, winning national championships, winning college football playoff games. Then the rest of the country will start to understand what I see, what I understand as a Big 12 guy.
What's interesting is the way that our numbers look when we talk about Texas Tech and BYU would be indicative that those programs would actually, not to shoo them off from the Big 12. I'm trying to piss you off or the fans that watch this. But what our numbers might indicate is that those programs do actually have relevance when they play, and certainly BYU impacted by their faith. But Texas Tech, a lot of intrigue this year with the money they've spent. Colorado, a lot of intrigue the last few years when they had things kind of rolling a little bit better than they do right now. It's interesting to see the dynamic of that change. I never thought a year and a half ago, 2 years ago when I started this channel, I never thought, man, I'd be doing Texas Tech and BYU videos. I thought, it'd be mostly SEC and Big Ten and maybe some Florida State. People are drawn to some certain programs and want to see them more. I don't have the list of everything right out in front of me, but Texas TV ratings certainly have taken a rise this year, I would imagine. And if BYU keeps winning, theirs will too. So interesting to kind of think about where this might play out, because again, nobody cared about Clemson, like you said.
And just to cinch it together a bit, NC State's a tough school to talk about, man. Yeah. And it's because they're not winning a lot right now. And can't think of the last college football addiction show that was specific about Wake Forest, but it's because, they're just...
Because we haven't done one.
Right. But what has Wake Forest done to call for that? I don't want to make their fans mad. I don't want to say they're a bad program or that they're bad people, right? But at some level, if you're not winning consistently in this sport, people don't talk about you. If you're not being talked about, that's not a recipe to be alive in 5 years in a big conference.
And we've done a lot more Vandy content the last 2 years than we ever did before. But I never imagined we'd do Vandy content. And even then, we didn't do much last year. Until they beat Alabama, and then we did a couple of things there. So I went 9 months without talking about Vandy. And even then, it's still somewhat sparse. Like their ratings are not pulling in insane numbers. We don't do a lot of Mississippi State content. We don't do a lot of Kentucky content. And that's nothing against those teams. We just only have so many hours in the day. I ain't doing BC content. I ain't doing Wake Forest content. I've done NC State a couple of times. Louisville is one that's kind of like on the fringe. You focus on the things that are kind of nationally relevant. And Texas Tech, BYU, Utah, Colorado for a little while, certainly nationally relevant in that perspective.
Hey, me again. Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is exactly what I use when I need tickets to a college football game. Boop, boop, boop. Game Time. College football is back, by the way. I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands. There's nothing like it, but let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like a bigger battle. There you go. Than the game itself. Endless queues and hidden fees and prices jumping at checkout. And that's why I use Game Time. I pull up the Game Time app, and in just a couple of taps, I see amazing deals. Talking college football games as low as $25. The app makes it super simple. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time to it today. Game Time. Use that code LOCKEDONCollege. $20 off. Game Time.
On BYU, there's some listen, I know they're very moral people, are they stealing though? Is there some drama afoot with BYU? Like the Holy War is done, and like we say every time we talk about this, the Holy War is actually never done.
I think it's incredibly funny, this nothing burger that came out from the Salt Lake City Tribune, and it is awesome. It got zero traction. Jason Badakow, I believe is how you pronounce the last name. I don't know, actually. Says, last spring, Caleb Lomu received a $1.5 million offer to transfer to BYU from Utah from a third-party intermediary. Here's a direct quote. They were basically saying, take it now. It's on the table for 24 hours. Jason says, but does tampering actually plague the BYU-Utah rivalry? Read here. So that's the tweet. If you then click on the link, by the way, that tweet got 299 likes, 98 retweets. You would think if BYU is trying to steal a Utah player for $1.5 million and it's a real, actual, tangible thing, folks would actually, be up in arms about this, and it would be national headlines and big news, and there'd be some sort of fine involved and report to the conference that Utah is being tampered with by the BYU Cougars. But instead, here's what this is, TJ. It's zero. It's zilch. It's nothing. It's something that no one should care about, and here's why. And here is why. Because guess what? Right now, somewhere in this country, there's a guy who is a strength and conditioning personal coach. And you know what he's doing? He says, I'm an alumni of Baylor University. My daughter plays high school softball. One day she's going to play college softball, maybe at Texas A&M, maybe at Texas. Oh, she says she wants to play at Houston. Great. I'm going to start DMing college softball athletes, offering them $1 million of my own personal money to go play at Houston so my daughter can win a national championship. TJ, can I ask you a question? Can you get back on the screen? Sorry, I'm summoning you here.
Look at you running the production too.
Producing. If that guy, the personal trainer who's got $1 million in the bank, wants to bring a girl in, play softball with his daughter, if that guy successfully does that, who gets fined? The answer is nobody, by the way. But who do you think? Who does the NCAA come down on?
Is it the kid?
No, nobody.
I was going to say, who could you
be nobody for? There's no check and balance here. Like the
NCAA is not even handling this anymore. It's like the College Sports Commission, right? By the way, which nobody even knows.
You can tomorrow direct message Bear Bachmeier, for example. I can direct message Bear Bachmeier and say, Bear, I'll give you $1.5 million to play at Utah next year. Take it or leave it. 24 hours on the table. And it's the exact same article that's being printed right now. Did I talk to Kalani Sitake about that? No. Did I talk to anybody at BYU? Did they tell me to do that? No. I just spat something out. Bear said no. And it's like, well, I did a good thing. I didn't have $1.5 million to give him anyway.
I was going to say, we need to have a conversation.
Yeah, no doubt. But that headline would be the exact same headline here. So I'm glad that, number one, no one cares about this. Because, look, if you don't think that if you do not think this is happening across the country, I have a beach house to sell you in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it's sitting on a lake that has no salt in it. There is something about where we sit in college football, and it is wrong, it is bad, but it's so odd that we say, like, so Crumble Cookies, you see their CEO paid for the fine for BYU rushing the field.
Yeah.
Pretty dope, right? That guy could just be like, hey, this Jordan Tyson's a really good wide receiver. I don't even care if BYU knows this. I'm just going to call Jordan Tyson's mom, give her $3 million. He's coming to BYU next year. And BYU can't do anything about that. The NCAA can't. The CSC can't. It's legal. You can do it whether you like it or not. And so that didn't happen, by the way, hypothetical. But that's where we sit here, is people are still complaining and female dogging over this stuff right now when it is what we deal with every day in college football. And I don't think Kalani Sitake had any idea that $1.5 million was ever thrown out there, if it even was.
What's interesting to me is people get upset about what happened and the way that you've described this and the way that you've kind of pointed out how it doesn't matter. I don't know that the NCAA is really getting after teams for even if they were involved. Now, I'm not trying to allude at all to BYU being involved. That is not my point. I don't think the NCAA is. Yeah, I mean, I guess we're hearing some recruiting violations that have taken place with Belichick and stuff. I think that's more about like contact. It's not necessarily like tampering because you need to have. Yeah, it's just a little different than what they're looking through, but. Even if it was BYU, which again, I'm not saying it was, don't get on me in the comments. That's happening everywhere. That is literally happening everywhere. And it's happening exactly the way that we're saying it because these coaches aren't dumb. Kalani Sitake is not out here DMing kids on active rosters. But not only is it happening from the school side, a representative of the school, the Crumble Cookie guy, right? It's also happening by these kids' agents where they're just floating it out there. These agents, and right or wrong, it is wrong. Right or wrong, these agents are floating out there like, hey, man, you see my guy having a pretty good year over here? You think he'd look good in orange and blue? You think he'd look good in garnet and gold? You think he'd look good with that gold helmet up in Notre Dame on him? What would your collective offer if he was going to do it? And so it's just the state of college football. And you can absolutely hate it because I absolutely hate it. I hate the idea of the way that we'd shuffle around the portal. I hate the highest bidder idea. I don't like any of that, right? But there's not a lot you can do about it because it's happening everywhere. Don't think that your program's any better because it ain't.
No, and look, this is, even if the schools aren't, like you said, if the schools are involved with this, there aren't enough checks and balances to not be involved.
There's no leadership and guidance.
If I'm the wide receiver coach, hell yeah, I'm calling my friend who's got quite a few $1 million in the bank and saying, hey, what do you think about this kid? He can really help us out. And from there, like the NCAA trying to prove that, especially if I use the right verbiage, the right whatever, is really tough. What I do think is so nuts about this, this just kind of comes into Jason posting this, what he posted it. This was put out at 11:14 Eastern time on the day of the Holy War. So this dude was sitting there at his computer like, this is it.
He was stewing. He was stewing after the loss, right?
Bomb of the century. I'm going to release this, and the Utah Utes are going to win the Holy War. This is going to take all the, somehow bring all the attention from the game to this. He's the Utes beat writer for the Salt Lake Trib, and I guess he believed that if somehow he wrote this story on the day of the Holy War, that it would give Utah enough, or BYU too much distraction, and Utah enough juice to go win. But it's nothing. It is the exact. I want to reiterate the point. It's the same thing as if I texted TJ Pittenger and said, TJ, you have 4 years of eligibility left. I'll give you $2 million to play for BYU. And the headline is, BYU third party offers $2 million to steal away college football addiction host. Like that's the level that we're talking about in these conversations. And I don't think, so this goes back a bit to your point too. Do you think the SEC is playing ball? You think they're being real kind and sweet and doing things that are, NCAA sanctioned and trying to keep it all, real close to the vest and sweet like?
No, not at all. Yeah. None of their programs are, right? They're all doing this. We got about a minute and we'll get out of here, but just real high level thoughts on the Holy War. Oh, did we both get this right? We both predicted BYU, right?
We did both predict BYU. Mine was 24. People kept telling me like, oh, you're so smart. You're a genius. And I was like, no, don't say all that. That's crazy. And then I said 24-21 and the final score was, I said 23-19 and the final score was 24-21. So I don't know.
I can't remember what I had, but it wasn't that good.
Maybe folks be listening to Locked On Big 12 and college football addiction. I don't know. But I thought it was awesome, man. Great experience to be out there. It's one of the best rivalries in college football. I don't think that this should be a black spot on Utah either. They didn't do anything. This is just like the Tribune Herald thing or whatever it is. So I don't think Utah even cared about this. Credit to Utah for not making a big deal out of it. They were like, just dude, shut up. Let's play the game, and they did. It was a great game.
Yeah, a lot of fun. BYU controls their own destiny at this point. Yeah. We were high on BYU in the offseason, and then we had the big questions once their quarterback was no longer there. And, massive credit to them because obviously that Texas Tech game is going to get a lot of attention. And then, they need to hold serve the rest of the year. But they've answered the call every time. And so we'll see if they can continue to do that. You got to get lucky sometimes, and they have at certain points, but man, they've been impressive so far. And doing it with Bachmeier there, I was talking with some buddies just literally right before we jumped on about the way that he's played as a true freshman, and it's been pretty impressive to watch. So, Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
At Locked On Big 12, wherever you find your podcasts, as well as YouTube. And if you really, really like bad tweets, at Drake C. Toll.
Do me a favor and hit the subscribe button wherever you watch this. We don't ask that a ton on here, but we would certainly appreciate it. We appreciate you always tuning in. Drake, thanks for hanging out.
Always fun, TJ.
Thanks, buddy.